Yeah, we didn't launch the preschool transportation until after he left. I figured that would put him over the edge, those routes in the middle of the day. There was actually a lady who did most of that work there, but
Is it Connie?
Connie.
Closer. No, it makes sense.
What's that? I've been all right.
It's not personal. Smartest guy.
Living the dream. All right, hanging in there.
Darn out.
Your strength is what that. That's really where you are? Yes. You're gonna get yourself in a bind.
Oh, Dan?
December they work.
The action one? Yeah, I don't know. Oh, yeah, just say that one at the beginning.
Jacob Cliff.
That one's coming up.
Really, Jacob?
I'm not.
We
You're not?
wanted to keep it short. We already
Just
just
Jake. Just Jake.
because the policy committee hasn't met to write this.
Ooh, that would be good. I grew up
So
with
we'll
Jake
meet
the Snake
on
comment,
Wednesday as a
but
policy
now
committee.
they've turned into Jake from
Hash
Snake
out the
Farm, so
language,
I'd rather be
final
Jake the
language,
Snake.
and we'll come up for a vote on either the 10th or the 14th.
Jake the
whenever we
Snake
have
Roberts, yeah.
our meeting.
Yep, you got it.
Willie, do you need help with that?
It's
You're doing great.
actually
You're doing great.
10.05. They have the jerk.
We're gonna go with that one.
What's that?
He falls down the contract. Splat. Request.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're back. You're not supposed to do that. You're back.
Oh, please. He's reaching there and grabbing it.
They got
I'm not sure you have enough.
chicken.
Ooh, Davenport pen.
That's right. Chicken
I like the color.
is not great.
Thank you.
It's an option. I've tried it out. No, they taste kind of chicken, actually. That's for beyond.
Do you want to follow the slide? No, I'm good.
Good job, Willie. I was cheering for you.
Good. Good.
I now call this regular meeting of Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. She said she saw.
Thank you. Director Gordon, would you please read the board priorities?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. Director Poston, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. There will be no presentations tonight. Also, for note for everyone, action item 10.05, we will be removing that. It needs to go back to the policy committee. All right, student board reports.
It's a very exciting week at West this week. It's Respect Week. This is a partnership between Falcon Friends, which is a group that I'm the president of, and it's where we take our life skills and our special needs students and we incorporate and nourish like friendships and stuff in between all different types of students. So Falcon Friends is partnering with the Special Olympics to promote inclusivity in our community. this week we invite any of the school board and the superintendent, anything like that, to come visit West. And that's, it tells you on this paper that I passed out earlier, the events we have going on this week. We'd love to have you guys come and see what our administration has planned out on the schedule. We'll be doing some things around the building, like today we passed out sticky notes with positive quotes all around the building, like all over the lockers, every door. And then something between all the second blocks in the building is that we're having a door decorating competition for like just respect and like inclusivity. So my second block door says like "You are loved," and it's a foreign language class, so it has it in like 12 different languages, and all these different classrooms are decorating their doors with positive things. And yeah, so we have a lot going on for the week, and there's more details on the paper, and I'll be sending out an email just like let you guys know the days and times to come.
The Beacon Eye newspaper print issue is coming out next week, March 9th, and I'm the editor, and we've been working really hard to get that out, and we're excited to share everything that's going on this term. We wanted to give a shout out to our custodian, Joseph Holcomb, who seems to be everywhere all the time and does a really great job keeping things running, so we appreciate that in our school. Our boys basketball team had a great sub-state game against the state-ranked Pleasant Valley team. Although they took a loss, it was a really close game. They lost by 14 points, and they fought until the end. The energy in the gym was great, and we had a really good turnout of West students and adult supporters. Last Monday, Bree and I, along with other district students, had the opportunity to attend the meeting with some of the Iowa legislators, and it was just a really great experience to be able to ask some questions and see what they do. So that was really awesome.
All right, so over at Central, a couple weeks ago, our dance team, Blue Illusion dance team, went to nationals in Orlando. They placed 6th in the nation for large varsity kick, made the semifinals for palm and jazz, and sophomore Maya Carr placed 2nd in the nation for solos. And we actually got to see her perform today at our pep odd, which was really cool. She's very talented. Our girls bowling team won the state championship last week, which we're very excited about. They were seeded 6th in the tournament and then beat the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st seed to take the title. The boys team was also at state, and they placed 8th as well. Yesterday, our show choirs had their last competition of their season. Our JV choir, Blue Vibrations, won 4th runner-up. Our varsity choir, Central Singers Incorporated, won the grand championship, won Best Vocals and Best Choreography, and Jack Stremlo won the Best Male Soloist Award for the 3rd time in a row. Also, our band, Pit Nation, won the Best Band. Our National Honor Society this Friday is hosting a little event during our DC time where we're going to be writing and sending personalized letters for elders through the Letters for Elders organization, where you can, they nominate elders on their website, and you just write positive notes to cheer them up. So we're going to be doing that. And for band, Central is hosting the Southeast Iowa Bandmasters Association District Jazz Festival this Saturday, and that's also a volunteer opportunity for Central students, primarily NHS students. So.
Alrighty, and then over at North, winter sports are obviously coming to an end. They all had a very great season. We're very proud of our Wildcats. And our first spring sports have started practice today, actually. So I got to sit in on our first tennis practice of the season. It was very cool to get to see them all very excited, and everyone's really looking forward to a great season. And then our North High cheer program placed very well at the Wow Factor Sports Cheer and Dance Championships in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So our stunt team placed first in the stunt competition, and the sideline team placed 2nd in that competition as well. And our North High show choir teams have been placing very well at all of their competitions that they have been attending recently, including our varsity show choir, Northside Establishment, being able to place 2nd during the daytime round of the same competition that Matre was talking about, and our male soloist for our ballad, Devontae Wesley, was able to win the other best soloist at that same competition. So we are very proud of our 563 groups. The North High Student Council has also been very hard at work preparing for our spring events, such as a volleyball tournament later this week. We have many, many teams signed up for that, including a staff team, which will be going up against some of our students. And I know everyone is very much looking forward to that. And over at North, we are also going to be renewing the popular Dancing with the Stars event, where each of our sports teams, along with some other just clubs, will be performing a dance to a popular song where they will be voted on by the groups, the other groups performing, and it's all to raise money for some charities and to help just help with funding. So we're very excited for the spring to be starting. So that's all.
Thank you, student board members. We greatly appreciate your input at the board meetings. Board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Poston.
On the 17th, I made a school visit to Adams to view early literacy in action. I'd like to thank Lisa and Bonnie and the staff. On the 18th, Finance Committee met with the auditors, and we'll be having a report on that under committee meeting. On the 21st, we met, we had our legislative meeting with the students, the legislators, and also Secretary of State Paul Pate was on the line with us. On the 22nd, I attended the facilities planning meeting at Sudlow, and I know we have some of the people on that committee here tonight, and I'd just like to say I thank the committee for all the hard work you're doing and all the time that you're putting into it. It's greatly appreciated. And then just to echo what Sarah Bernick said earlier about the West Boys basketball game against Pleasant Valley, it was just a great high school basketball game. The gym was just electric, and so proud of the boys team. And they just fell a little bit short, but it was a great game.
Thank you. Are there any other board reports? The only thing I have, I was at Fillmore's winter concert for the kindergartners through third graders. It was a great time. The gym was packed. I think it was like standing room only by the time they got done. So with that, any other board reports? Seeing none, I will move on to communications. Open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in a hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district's website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbrin@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings laws prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We didn't have any virtual ones, right? And we have one for in-person, John Keeley. And you know the routine. Step up, state your name and address for the record, please.
John, you'll have to get a microphone from there.
Good evening. There you go. Good evening. John Keeley, 3240 Lorton Avenue, Davenport, Iowa. Good evening, members of the Davenport Board of Education. My name is John Keeley, and I'm a social studies teacher at Davenport West High and president of the Davenport Education Association, representing over 1,200 teachers, nurses, social workers, and other licensed professional employees in the Davenport School District. I'm speaking to you tonight in support of the resolution in front of you, all against private school vouchers that are being proposed by the governor of Illinois, with the bill being shepherded through the Iowa State Legislature as we speak. First, thank you very much for putting the resolution on your agenda. Second, I hope that you agree with me that public tax dollars should be spent on public education and not on private schools or private school vouchers. Parents have the right to send their children to private schools, but public schools, like those of us here in Davenport, we must teach all children irrespective of their ability or status in life. Private schools may legally exclude children who do not fit their educational program, the program of those private schools. I hope you agree that publicly funded private education only continues the separation of the haves versus the have-nots in our society. Finally, resources are already strained for public schools in Iowa. As you all know, class sizes and teachers' loads have been increasing, and this board spends hours and hours working on the school district's budget and will hopefully ending the year in the black. Diverting these precious resources from public education students, where the vast majority of the students in Iowa are taught, to private schools does not enhance, but only hurts the mission of those who participate in public education. A voucher system hurts all students who attend public schools. Please put an end to them by voting yes for the resolution before you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Keeley. Thank you. Seeing no other open forum, I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Gordon,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion on approval of bills? Someone else is gonna have to read it all. She had to step out.
Mr.
Oh,
President.
all right. Director Beck.
I don't know what else to do, Mr. President. I move the board approve the following resolution. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of February 9th, 2022 to February 22nd, 2022, noting the following voided checks: 377-297, wrong vendor; 377-299, wrong amount; and 377-380, wrong amount.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Gordon,
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. Superintendent report.
There are none at this time.
Committee report.
We'll wrap up.
Committee reports. Director Pasha, you want to start off with the Finance Committee one?
Like I said earlier, we met on the 18th, and the auditors were there, and so we went over the complete audit, and that will be presented to the board on the 14th. Although I think that meeting's being changed to the 10th, but anyway, it'll be at one of those two dates. And then Kevin is going to present quickly the key measures report and the monthly fund report.
Brenda, if you'll put up the January fund report, the second one in that list. There's a few things, this is through the month of January, there's a few things I want to draw your attention to. On the revenue section, you'll notice that our local and our state are up and down opposite each other. The biggest takeaway from that is with declining enrollment, our state aid is lower. So you see our state lagging behind a little bit, but our local goes up because we're on the budget guarantee, and that's property taxes. So those two negate each other as far as those differences are concerned. On the federal revenues, our revenues are up because we had more ESSER funding through this period this year than the ESSER funds, ESSER 1 funds from last year. So you'll see a bump in that. Typically, they've been running about $2 million or less. Other than FY21 was up a little bit for ESSER funds, but it's climbing as we progress through our spending for ESSER 2 and 3 funds. On the expenditure side, one thing to note when you look at our salary totals between FY21 and FY22, while we've had budget reductions in staffing in general, one of the things to point out, we've also had an increase in use of our ESSER funds, especially in the salary line. It plays through all the expenditures, but the primary one is in the salaries line. In ESSER 2 and 3, we have spent approximately $3 million in salaries alone. So without those in there, that would be $3 million more. That would be $3 million less without the ESSER funds. So the takeaway from this is you can start to see the effect of our staffing levels that we've had to reduce due to our enrollment. So that's a great sign. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the surplus deficit. Even though we have an $883,000 deficit year to date between revenues and expenditures, keep in mind, this is the end of January. In 6 weeks from the end of January, we'll be getting our second large installment of our property taxes, so that number will climb. But you'll notice in the prior years, the trend has been $5 and $3 million, and we're less than $1 million negative at this point in time. Again, that's a factor of all the processes that we put into place to reduce staffing, to make ourselves going in the right directions to get us out of the red. Any questions on that section for the month ending January? If not, I'll flip to the other key measures.
Can you just go over to Brenda's and do it?
Got it. Okay. There's a couple items on here for our unspent authorized budget. It looks like we're estimated to go up to 11%. I will say that's a little bit of a misnomer because if you remember, we're going to be making some very large payments with our ESSER funds. So that number is going to come back down, but it's still going to, it looks like our projections are going to stay within the 5 to 15% range, our target range. So these numbers are looking better and better as the year goes on. If you remember, I said you don't really see the effect until you get into January, February, March. You see the net effect in our UAB, and that's starting to show. And you'll see in the solvency ratio, it's showing a 17% solvency ratio. Again, that's a little high because we will be spending some ESSER funds, and so our solvency will come back down to closer to that 12% budget amount, which is excellent for us. On page 2, it always bears repeating because we're getting closer and closer to this time. You'll see 2 negative amounts compared to our published budget. They are due to ESSER funds, and having to reproject our expenditures in our food nutrition account. So those two lines we will amend when we do our regular budget, and I'll be bringing that to you again in March to review, and then in April to approve. So those two will go hand in hand with the FY23 budget. Any questions on that?
One of the things that we are really digging into now is we're coming up on a full year of utilizing Forecast 5 inside of our district. So we're beginning to do some testing of our own and to test the validity of the tool that we're using. So Kevin's been working tirelessly with Forecast 5 and our own internal people to really test this tool, because we want to make sure that everything that we're utilizing is allows us to make better decisions inside of our district. That's it.
That it. Thank you. Policy Committee. Right as you take a drink.
I put the lid on it.
We are meeting on Wednesday, so we have no updates at this time, but we will at our next meeting.
Thank you. Director Gordon, do you want to give us an update on LZAC?
We don't have any updates at this time either. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 8th, which is a week from tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Director Potts, would you like to give us an update on long range?
Yeah, long-range facilities. The board is going to get a presentation this evening, which is the primary introduction to the work that's been done by this committee of volunteer citizens. It's broken down into 4 chunks. The idea of the presentation is for us to take in part 1. When they're done with their presentation, when they're done with their information sharing, then we'll be able to ask questions. We want to kind of control our questions so that we don't wind up wandering off in different directions or jumping the gun on the next piece of the presentation. So I think if we can hold to that, get our presentation, ask our questions, the next presentation, ask our questions, it'll be much more efficient and focused for us, and it will benefit everyone.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Hayes, did you want to give us an update on the Data Wall Ad Hoc Committee?
Our first data wall meeting will be held on March 10th at 3:45.
Thank you. All right, legislative advocacy. Director Passion, did you want to add any, or you kind of did that during board reports, but.
I think we covered it.
Okay. All right, I am going to give a shout out to all of the students that participated. And if I say your name wrong, I am so sorry. Vivian Bondi from North High School. Brianna Alzaziak from West High School. Is it T-Win? T-Win? I knew that. From West High School. Stoyota Win? Stoyota Win from West High School. I probably should have had you guys read these. It would have been better for me, huh? Casillas Henderson from West High School. Cassius. Maybe I should have you guys read this. Mary Steffen from Central High School. Cassius Duncan from West High School. Addison Ford, Central High School. Jenna Van Hoosier from Central High School. Olivia Heller from North High School. Ian Padron from North High School. Abby Ivonic from Central High School. She's a St. Ambrose intern. Ariana Pickett, St. Ambrose intern as well. And then for staff, Julie Heller from North High School, Vince Jurgana from Central High School, and the legislators that were present, Cindy Winkler, Monica Korth, Senator Knoyer, and from the House, Raj Pash, and also the Secretary of State.
And Miss Sarah was there. She
I was virtually.
You better get on her. She didn't have a thank you note that we missed.
I'm offended. I'm really offended right now.
and Sarah.
It's okay.
And Sarah Brennick from West High School. Thank you. I didn't miss anybody else or mispronounce anybody else's names, I hope. Again, thank you all very, very much. Obviously, it's a day off for you, so kudos to the staff and Superintendent Schneckloff and Brenda T. for putting it together. We greatly appreciate it. All right. Well, we'll move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the schedule of 1,080 hours of instruction time rather than 180 days for the 22-23 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Director Kleindro. All right. Is there any discussion on this? I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Kleindro.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.02 start date for the 2022-23 school year?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
I move the board approve the start date of August 23rd, 2022 for the 2022-23 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I think she got you, Bruce. Seconded by Director Kleindro. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Kleindro.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.03, the 2022 to 2023 academic calendar?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the academic calendar for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
Thank you, Director Kleindro. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Kleindro.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.05, the Walcott calendar change?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the 7 minutes will be added to the instructional day and contract day beginning March 10th, 2022 for Walcott K-8 school students and staff.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Kleindro.
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. As I noted at the beginning of the meeting, subject 10.05 has been removed as an action item, so I will entertain a motion for subject 10.06, the vouchers resolution.
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the vouchers resolution as presented. Whereas the 2022 Iowa legislature will look at enacting vouchers, also called education savings accounts, school choice scholarships, and the like, for families to use public money to send children to non-public schools. And whereas the board of the Davenport Community Schools District, in consultation with its community, has determined that the Iowa legislature should not enact vouchers under any name, should continue to promote and fully invest in Iowa's public schools. More specifically, the Board of Directors of the Davenport Community School District believes that all students deserve a quality education, regardless of race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, and disability, even those in schools identified as in need of comprehensive support and improvement. and public money is intended for that use. Public schools are open to serve and accommodate all students regardless of race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, and disability, but private and religious schools may choose to refuse admission to any student. The coronavirus pandemic has had an outsized impact on students with the fewest resources, those least likely to be able to take advantage of any voucher program due to a lack of nearby private schools, transportation support, or other disadvantage. Voucher programs will divert crucial money away from these students at a time when they most need it. Public funds require public accountability and transparency, but private and other non-public schools are not held to the same standards of transparency. Taxpayers have a right to know how their funds are being used, but are left in the dark about the use and impact of voucher funds. The public's investment should be used to support public community schools, which are open to all students, regardless of race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, and disability, not for new entitlement programs for parents who choose private education. Public schools are overseen by a publicly elected citizen governing board, are required to report academic results to the general public, have an annual public financial audit, and be transparent with all expenditures and decision-making. Private and religious schools are not held to that same public standard. School choice already exists in Iowa, and competition is not a valid argument, as private and religious schools may refuse any student, leading to the artificial inflation of academic results. Staff and teachers in Iowa public schools deserve the financial support of the state of Iowa. Diverting public dollars from public schools will hinder the ability of the state's boards of education to provide competitive salaries and benefits in recognition of their worth. Be it further resolved that this Davenport Community Schools Board of Education opposes any funding programs, vouchers, or otherwise that have the effect, intended or not, of diverting public tax dollars from public schools to private and religious schools or to charter schools that are not under the auspices of locally elected school boards.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
Director Postian.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. That's it for action items, right? All right. We'll move on to discussion items. I will turn it over to Director Beck as the policy chair.
So we have quite a few policies that are here for second discussion. I will note that the only changes that have been made to these policies since the last time we had them up for discussion are policy 710.02 on free or reduced price meals eligibility. That one is a note that we are required to notify families twice a year. And Connie from Food and Nutrition Services requested that we use a dollar amount if a student owes more than $10. The Director of Food and Nutrition Services may contact the parent or guardian rather than money for 5 or more meals. So instead of saying if a student owes money for 5 or more meals, it's now $10. And it just says that the director can contact a family member. The only other change was to policy 711.07, and this is school bus safety instruction. We are required to do this at least twice during the school year, and apparently we had listed it as annually, and after Mr. Amansky reviewed it, he said it was actually twice a year, so that's the only change. Those are the only two changes from prior versions of these policies. So I'll entertain any questions. All right, so probably at our next regular meeting, these will be up for vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Beck. Before we start the discussion on long-range plan, we're going to take a 5-minute break because I know this is going to be a long section. It's going to take a little bit. If anyone needs to use the restrooms, they are right out there to the left.
Without further ado, Matt, thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Great to see all of you again. I'm glad we took a break. We got about 4 hours ahead of us. No, there's a lot here. We're not going to spend 4 hours on it. It's important as a board to know that this is just the first conversation we're going to have. There's a lot of information we're going to share tonight. Don't feel like if a question doesn't come to you and it comes to you later, we're not going to come back to this. We're going to have multiple conversations with you as a board. Facility master planning committees have had 4 meetings now, so we're always kind of revisiting kind of prior content. So same opportunity, obviously, for you as directors and board members as we move forward. So obviously, we're looking to get your thoughts and feedback this evening, but don't feel as though we have to go super deep. If you want to do that, we're happy to do that, independent of this or at a subsequent meeting. So with that opening, I'm going to turn it to Mark Roffers of MD Roffers, and he is going to walk us through the enrollment projections work that their team has done. We will follow this with a 15-ish minute Q&A for you and Mark if you have any questions for him. So Mark, take it away.
Good evening, board, and thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. I have another planner with me on the Skype, Nick Johnson, and so if you have questions and I can't answer them, my bet is that he can. I have a long presentation. It's 55 slides, and I think going through all that would be worse than detention. So I'm going to hit the highlights and then focus in on the meat of the presentation, which is the enrollment projections. You have, or if you don't, you will shortly have a copy of this full presentation. It runs through our assessment of trends that are affecting enrollment in your district. It describes our detailed methodology. That methodology involves projecting housing unit growth and then converting that and adding to that to develop enrollment projections. Finally, we compare those projections to the school capacity information that you'll hear more about from Matt, John, and their team a little bit later. The methodology and what we're here to do and what we've done for the district is to take a look at demographic and housing change within the district and in its neighborhoods, and I'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. We are urban planners by training, and we work with the local planners in the city and other outlying communities, as well as interviewing the development community to project future housing construction, which does have a connection, obviously, to enrollment growth. We share and have shared our enrollment projections by each of 87 different neighborhoods we've divided the district into. And by existing school attendance areas, the geographic boundaries that feed each of the elementary, junior high, and high schools over the next 10-year period. And as I mentioned, we'll compare that to school capacity. Our methodology is unique. We do everything but look at the last 10-year trend and draw a line further out to share with you the next 10-year trend. And the details that you'll see in the presentation, and we will have actually an even more detailed report for you very shortly, go into considerable depth on our methodology. I do want to talk a little bit about trends that we're seeing in the district and focus in particular on just one slide that we have in the presentation to summarize that. What Nick and I have found is that while your enrollment in the Davenport district has stabilized in recent years, we have observed, and with data from the state and others, decreases in births. And that coupled with larger graduating classes over the next few years suggests another period of enrollment decrease on the horizon, and you'll see some more details going forward. We do have residential building activity going on within your district, which is good news for the community and for the district. Although we have found through a variety of means the fact that the district receives a relatively modest number of new students for every new housing unit. On average, it takes about 4 new single-family houses to generate 1 new student for your district, and about 20 apartment units to generate 1 new students. So quite a bit of new housing is needed for enrollment growth out of new housing. And what we're generally finding with existing housing is fewer and fewer students emerging from older housing as birth rates go down, not only in Davenport, but really nationwide. We may see some positive impacts on enrollment based on the growing number of millennial and minority population in your district. That could result in a birth increase, or at least a stabilization in the number of births in your district, which could help bolster enrollment as we get to the end of the period. But that's dependent on a lot of different factors, including how successful the community is in retaining those populations and how successful the district is in delivering quality education. I'm going to jump forward and talk about our projections next. I'll first pause a little bit on a map that talks about our methodology. So just as a reminder, what we did is we subdivided the school district into 87 different neighborhoods. The boundary lines on these maps represent each of the neighborhoods. Those were crafted to coincide with elementary attendance areas, middle school or junior high attendance areas, and high school attendance areas. And you can see it a little bit more tightly zoomed in on the city portion of your school district on this map. So this really became the foundation for our projections and all the analysis we did to come up with them. I'm going to hop forward now and talk about the projections themselves. So bear with me as I work my way through the preliminaries to get to that. Okay, so you should now see a slide that says student enrollment projections, and I'll launch right into our findings. So what we're finding for all schools, grades K through 12, we are projecting over the next 10 years a decrease of about 750 K through 12 students in your schools. If you want to look at it on an average per year, that's about a 75 resident student decrease. And then you see a couple of disclaimers. This doesn't include folks that live outside of your district but attend schools in your district. So that would tend to reduce, at least slightly, the projected 750 student decrease that we're projecting over the next 10 years. We are also assuming that of your residents, that the rates of open enrollment out to other school districts, the rate of private schooling, and the rate of homeschooling will remain relatively steady through 2031. I mean steady pre-pandemic, and what we're finding and talking with school district staff to be emerging post-pandemic. And then finally, we are including in our projections a slight bump that you do see each year from grades 8 through 9 as many private and homeschool students move to a high school in your district. We have projected all this information, as I mentioned before, not just for the district as a whole, but on a very fine-grained level, neighborhood by neighborhood. This is a heat map that shows for each neighborhood where we're projecting increased enrollment and where we're projecting decreased enrollment. And the hotter the color, the redder the color, the greater the increase, the cooler the color, the darker the green, the more significant the projected enrollment decrease. Zooming in on the city, or a small section of the city to kind of help out understand this a little bit better. The areas where we're projecting enrollment increases are generally focused where we're expecting significant housing growth. And to a lesser extent, sometimes in neighborhoods with high projected turnover to new families. So where we're seeing or where we have seen, for example, subdivisions that have developed in the 1990s, we expect generational turnover to occur, and we already are starting to see it occurring as the first wave of families that bought those houses in the 90s are moving on and a new crop are moving in. The areas where we see projected enrollment decreases, they're in many of the older city neighborhoods with housing that's not as suitable for families, and therefore with limited projected turnover to new families. And we're also seeing some scattered rural places like Walcott with projected enrollment decrease. So This map that you see on screen shows the neighborhood number in black and whether we're projecting an increase or decrease in total K through 12 enrollment and how big that number is. Now we zoom to the elementary, junior high, and high school levels. So of that 750 student decrease, we're projecting that about 240 of those kids will be at the grades K through 6 level between 2021 and 2031. So again, if you care to divide by 10, that's about 24 or so fewer elementary school students each year on average. And that change will not necessarily be uniform throughout the district. So if we add up our projections for each of the neighborhoods and apply them to the current attendance areas, we note that the attendance areas for Monroe, Adams, and Wilson are projected to have the greatest decreases in resident enrollment. And the attendance areas for Bluegrass and Eisenhower are projected to actually have enrollment increases, which is largely correlated to new home construction and particularly single-family home construction within those attendance areas. So, your challenge is not necessarily uniform district-wide, and your opportunities are not necessarily uniform either. So what we did, this graphic represents, and I'll give you a little tour of what this is first. The black line represents the projected enrollment, elementary school enrollment from about 6,900 and some change down to 6,700 projected by the year 2031. That's the black line. The gray area represents the lower limits or the ideal capacity of all of the elementary schools combined at about 9,300, and John and Matt will present more about that later. And the 10,005 number represents the upper limit capacity or maximum capacity of the elementary schools. So when we make a comparison of projected enrollment to school capacity, we project that the district will have excess capacity of anywhere between 2,600 and 3,800 students by the year 2031. We have compared these elementary school enrollment projections by school using current attendance area boundaries. And what we found and what you'll see is that certain schools are projected to have significant excess capacity, several others not as much, and a handful not even any as we look forward over the next 10 years. So this is based on current attendance areas. It's not determinative for where changes should be made. This is a first step, not the last step. There's many other factors that the BRAID team will lead you through to consider, including the condition of buildings, its location, and other factors. And so those enrollment projections for the K-6 level largely follow the K-12 projections with some differences depending on where you are within the district and how neighborhoods are aging and where new housing unit growth is occurring. And I'm going to show you on the next slide a big long table, and I'm going to spend very little time on. It's a super important table for you as you move forward, but probably a little too much detail for your long conversation tonight. So I just explained to you in advance, we're going to be presenting on that table both 2021, 22 students and seats, how many kids are actually enrolled at each school, and how many, what is the resident enrollment for each school. So I wanted to define those because it can be a little tricky. So students and seats, total number of students enrolled, that might include student enrollment from other geographic attendance areas within your district. What we found throughout the process is that the different colors I showed on the maps representing different elementary attendance areas are not necessarily the final word as to where students attend school currently in your district. So that complicates things a little bit. And it doesn't, the students in seats total includes open enrollees in of residents from other school districts, so it's not just resident students. Now, in contrast, our resident enrollment count for each school is based on the number of students who actually lived within the published geographic attendance area for that school. If it was shown that they lived in the attendance area for Eisenhower, that's the number you'll see in the DC SD residence column. And in some cases, those students may actually attend different schools based on the somewhat flexible approach that you have in the district. All right, so this is that big long table that I promised not to spend too much time on, but the first two columns I just described for each of the several elementary schools. The current counts based on those different measures. The resident count is important because it becomes the foundation or the basis for which to compare our enrollment projections. So our enrollment projections are for the year 2024 for each school, 2026, and 2031. So 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year projections. And so it's important to look at these as resident enrollment numbers on the assumption that everyone within that geographic attendance area for each of the elementary schools actually goes to that elementary school. And then what you can do with this chart is compare projected enrollment by the capacity range for that school, which Bray has supplied the district and us. So you can see if let's just take Adams as an example, since they're first on the list. Projected enrollment is in the 500 range, declining slightly, projected to decline slightly over the next 10 years. And that building capacity is somewhere between 578 and 653. So that building is projected to operate under capacity over the next 10-year period. And you can just read that table or read this table the same way for the other schools on the list. Moving to the junior high school level of that 750 student decrease that we're projecting about 140 of those will be at the junior high school grades 7 through 8 level over the next 10 years. And assuming no changes in attendance areas and that all projected students will attend their geographically assigned junior high, we are projecting decreased enrollment at 4 of the 5 junior high schools. With Williams being the one projected to decrease the most, and a slight increase in enrollment at the Walcott portion of that combined elementary junior high school building. So this graphic is a decent summary as to where that sits, and so comparing our projections to Bray's combined junior high school capacity, we're projecting that the district will have excess capacity for anywhere between 1,200 to 1,700 junior high school students by the year 2031, depending as to whether you look at that lower level capacity or ideal capacity or the upper level or maximum capacity of the junior highs combined. And this map, there's a map for everything when you're talking to a planner, and this is a map of the grade through 7, 8 enrollment projections over the next 10 years. Again, with the redder the color, the more significant the increase, and the darker green the color, the more significant the projected decrease. And then this is the companion table to that that elementary table, which shows, again, an assessment of the current enrollment at the junior high schools with the 2 assumptions I mentioned earlier, and then our projected enrollment for the junior highs. And you see we've got some assumptions to make both at the junior high school level and high school level regarding the Creative Arts Academy and Mid-City that kind of get fleshed out in our assumptions in the notes at the bottom. Finally, to the high school level of that 750, we're projecting about 370 of those, that decrease being at the high school level between 2021 and 2031. This is not unlike many districts in the Midwest, at least, in that the current larger classes that you have, due to more births in the 2000s and the early 2010s, will be replaced by smaller classes as the birth rate has declined since that period of time.
That's unfortunate.
I think he just declined.
He was afraid of your questions. He'll be back.
Did he like mute himself?
Dun, dun, dun.
Still showing here.
Is Nick still connected?
Zoom, zoom.
It's like my house. Maybe one of his kids tripped over the modem and unplugged it.
Maybe he spilled some water.
Yeah, maybe he spilled some water on it.
Medium.
Actually, we did lose you. Was it on our end or yours?
What?
I don't still have you back. You were
Yeah,
at
because you made me work the night.
Yeah. I thought I had the same question.
You see that slide can hold over 1,000 kids?
Yeah, I noticed the same thing when it was presented.
Just sit tight to folks that are watching us from at home. We're having some technical difficulties and we're working on it.
And I am back. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure where the problem might have been. I'll go back to sharing my screen. And as I understand and hearing from Matt, that where you lost me as I began to talk about the high school level. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So hopefully we're back online. So at the high school level, our projection is for a decrease of about 370 resident high school students between 2021 and 2031. Why the significant decrease at the high school level? It's about half of the projected decrease. Well, there's currently larger classes, which is typical of Midwestern school districts due to fairly significant numbers of births in the 2000s to early 2010s. We're expecting those will be replaced by smaller classes over the next several years. And as a result, all three standard high schools are projected to have decreased resident student enrollment over the period. That's under a big assumption, and that assumption is that all high school students would attend their geographically assigned high school in the future. I understand that that's not the current practice, so for high schools, it's probably even most instructive of any of the grade levels to look at the combined capacity. And as we compare our projections to the combined high school capacity, we're projecting that the district will have excess capacity for anywhere between 70 and 800 high school students by the year 2031. And that depends on whether you're looking at the lower or the upper end of the capacity range. Right now, the district is operating within that capacity range that Bray has estimated for you. And by 2031, we're projecting, essentially to be right at the lower end of that capacity range. And there's a map for this too. This just shows the projected enrollment at the high school level by neighborhood. And this is the detail for each of the high schools, again, under that big assumption that everyone who attends one of the geographically assigned attendance areas for Central, North, or West attends Central, North, or West. And then you can see there's some assumptions built in for the creative arts and for Mid-City. So on my end, some final thoughts, and then I'll be available for questions, internet gods permitting. Is that, again, we're projecting a decrease of about 750 K through 12 students by 2031. That continues the enrollment decreases over the last decade, but with the rates actually projected to go down of enrollment decrease compared to the last decade. And that's based on a variety of factors that I led with, including lower birth rates and relatively low student generation from new housing, which are two sides of the same coin. And I always say this at the end of a presentation, particularly when I'm projecting a decrease, is that this is a forecast, it's not a destiny. The district and the community have the ability to positively affect future enrollment through facility improvements, programming, other adjustments to the community and the district. And of course, it's also dependent on other things that may go on at the state level, as I listened in a little bit earlier today. And then this is the summary of the information, and really sort of the takeaway from this project is as you think about right-sizing your schools going forward, is to deal with this kind of projected enrollment to capacity differential, particularly at the elementary and junior high school level. And from my end, potential implications is that the district should consider school reconfiguration or consolidation, in other words, right-sizing as part of your planning process. And the enrollment projections that we can offer you for each of the 87 neighborhoods could help decide where such actions may be appropriate and how, once those take place, how attendance areas might be changed to serve the different stable of schools or a different array of schools in the district. But again, I'll close with saying that there's a ton of other factors aside from our enrollment projections that influence where and when you might right-size your schools to serve your students. With that, I'll close my projection and open up to questions. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions from the board member? Director Beck.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for this presentation. I had two questions. The first one was, I noticed on the K through 6 enrollment projections detail table, slide 43, all of the schools, all of the elementary schools have sort of relatively close relationship between the number of students in seats and the number of residents in the area, with the exception of one. McKinley Elementary has 416 students in seats, but only 279 listed as in the neighborhood area. Do you happen to know why there's such a discrepancy there?
I know in general, and then I'm going to suggest that Nick Johnson, my colleague, I think he knows more specifically. And that's the general answer is that for that school, there are many students from other attendance areas that are attending attending McKinley. Okay. And Nick, can I impose on you to provide more detail? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. We'll get this.
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm actually opening up our database of students now to see if I can get you an exact answer, but I believe that's the reason why. There's just several students that attend McKinley that don't live within those few neighborhoods that are in the McKinley attendance area.
Okay, and that, I mean, that makes sense. I know not everybody attends the school, the attendance area that they live in for lots of reasons. My other question was, at the beginning you were talking about sort of stabilizing of our decreases, overall decreases over the years. And I guess one of my questions was, the open enrollment law changed last year. So when you factored in for stability of that decrease, sort of leveling off, I think it was slide 35. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did that include the new law where open enrollment is kind of well, it's been opened up, no pun intended, or
Yep.
before that.
Yeah, I'll ask Nick for further elaboration, but we did get that insight from the district staff, and our projections assume the new law, the continuation of the new law going forward.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct, Mark.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have
You're
questions?
welcome.
Director Poston?
I think it says here in the notes that Bray and Associates came up with the building capacity range. How did you, was that strictly on square footage, or how did you come up with those?
Yeah, thank you, Director Poston. We're actually going to go through that whole presentation in the next section.
Director Klein, Jerome?
There is a note on slide 51, says Mid-City High School will begin offering grade 9 programming in 22-23. Is that something we are considering for this fall?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other board members have any other questions? I think you can cut them off the hook.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark and Nick. Appreciate your work. As you can see, there's a lot here. As Mark noted, there is a full report. This is the presentation version. So as soon as that is available, we will be sharing that as well. So it's really important foundational information to use as we talk through the next sections of this evening, but also advance our discussions at the Facility Master Planning Committee level and eventually the board level about right sizing as we move forward as a district and a community. So thank you, Mark and Nick.
Thanks again. Take care now.
Thank you.
All right, so we will jump in as Director Poston got to before we could get to that section of the presentation. The other lens, not only enrollment, which we just discussed at length, but we also need to look at capacity. And the goal with any long-range master planning effort is to propose a solution that aligns those two things, current and projected enrollment with available capacity. We also then want to build in valves or the ability to adjust as one of those two things changes. Capacity changes, meaning programming, how we deliver programming changes and affects capacity in some way, shape, or form. More students or less students can appropriately be educated within a school facility. Or inversely, we have a change in enrollment, up or down. So we're not there yet, but as we get to the finish line with this effort over the next year, working together, those will be the two things we're always looking at, is how are we doing aligning current and projected enrollment with available capacity? And then what valves can we or should we be considering building in to adjust up or down? Because we know that none of this is perfect, right? Demography, enrollment projections, there's a fair amount of crystal ball work associated with that. Same thing as we jump into capacity. So tab P3 in your book is the full capacity study. And I think the presentation, do we have the PDF? If you scroll through, I'm trying to think. This is in board docs, isn't it, this evening? The presentation? Okay. Oh, I'm supposed to control. You really trust me to do that?
I saved both. You want to go to the board docs?
All right.
Those are the two that I had.
Okay, the one, all right, we don't have that handy then.
Those were the two.
Yeah, so you didn't get the one I sent you today?
I can look at it.
Okay. I think I sent you one earlier today. Well, we'll get started. So the capacity study, as you have in front of you, the goal, as we noted, we're going to talk through very briefly how we calculate capacity at each of our school types. So elementary, junior high, and high school capacities are calculated differently. As you can imagine, at an elementary level, take a first grade class. When those first graders aren't in their classroom, they're at art, they're at lunch, they're at music, wherever they are. We can't plug 22 more first grade kids into that classroom. So elementary capacities are relatively easy to arrive at. You quantify the number of classrooms we have times a range of how many students would we comfortably want to educate. That range that Mark referenced a number of times, low to high, is the acknowledgement that it isn't a finite number. We don't put 22 kids in every single classroom across the district. There's a range, right? Some are 24, some are 21. So you'll see as we get into this that is how the elementary capacity range is calculated. It's identifying the number of rooms and then applying that range of student enrollment to those. And that range, if my eyes work that we've been applying, I'm going to wait till we get it up so I don't give you bad information. But we will go through Truman as a quick case study. When we get to the junior high and high school levels, it becomes a little more complicated because our schedules are different. We'll use high school as an example. When a science lab is not being used, you can put 24 to 28 new students into that science lab. So we apply not only a number of students in the class, 24 to 28 students, but we also apply a percentage utilization rate. So that's suggesting that we could, but it's not effective planning to assume that we're going to use a classroom or a lab 100% of the time. Every period of every single day, that room will be occupied by 24 to 28 students. That's not a realistic way to program a school, right? The labs in the classrooms, teachers don't have prep periods or breaks. And so that's one valve we'll eventually talk about is if we grow, that would be a valve you can open up is to increase the utilization rate on a room by room level. We also apply that utilization rate to areas that don't get used as often. So think of a specialty space like a family and consumer science lab or a gymnasium space or a band room. Those aren't going to get used as heavily, 87% of the day, as a more conventional English, world language, social studies, math, science classroom would be. Elective-based classrooms are not going to get quite as much utilization because of the specialty. So those are programmed at a slightly smaller percentage utilization rate. So that will hopefully help understand as we get into the details of the capacity study where we're at. Changing any one of those variables, number of students in the classroom, especially as we get to the junior high and high school level, changing either of those variables, percentage utilization rate or number of students in classrooms, especially a district of your size, really can change that capacity significantly. So this is an art, it's not a science. You could say we should have more or less students. There's definitely a lot of that conversation that could be had. But it's just important as another benchmark to understand when we're arriving at a long-range master plan, what is an effective educational capacity for our school buildings as we begin that evaluation. So in summary, when we do actually get to the summary pages, and you have these in the book in front of you this evening, what we have broken down is provided you the full report under tab P3. You're all good, thank you. We have given you a description of the methodology, and then on pages 8 and 9 of that really is going to give you the overall capacity ranges. So this will show you that our capacity range minimum is about 17,000 students when we go from our Children's Village campuses all the way up through our high school level. And our maximum capacity is about 19,600. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job, Brenda.
Way to go, T.
And now it relies on the user to know how to do this, correct? All right. That might be the bigger problem tonight, is having me run the show.
I would delegate.
All right, we're almost there. I apologize.
It wouldn't be a meeting if there weren't technical.
I think this might have been a user error on this end issue this evening.
I mean, I would have went over to the sidebar and scrolled it a little faster. But
How do you do that?
that's cool.
I don't live in your world. All right, we're here. All right, so I think we touched basically on what the goal of the capacity study was and is, how we go about identifying rooms, and we do have to thank your principals and your ILDs. They spent a great deal of time going room by room, building by building, identifying to make sure that we were accurately depicting in the capacity study how those classrooms either are being used or could be used. That's the other critical piece of this. When you have a school building that is currently under enrollment, they've taken over space, right? They're utilizing larger classrooms for maybe 3 or 4 student instruction. So your principals and ILEs did a great job of identifying generally what the highest and best use of a classroom could be, so that we did have an accurate depiction of enrollment versus capacity. The methodology, I touched on that as well. So the case study of Truman, very briefly, you'll see as we get into this, these are color-coded by grade level. So when you have the full study in front of you, you can do full pullouts and look at every building by building, but you can start to see how we break down color code, which classroom is utilized for which subject currently. We then take that and apply a range of 22 to 25 students per grade level at our 5K through our flex or our 6th grade classrooms. They get a little larger, 24 to 27. And that gives you a total building capacity of 460 to 519 for Truman. So again, that range is just truly indicative of quantity of classrooms with a range of student min to student max. These mins and maxes, I also should note, are not specific to if you're over that max by 1 or 2, it doesn't mean anything. This is really just done for the sole purpose of determining capacity. It's not a code restriction. It's not as though you can't educate more or can't educate less, but we have to put some parameter, as you can imagine, on these in order to do this work. So that's really what these are. It's a planning parameter size, not any sort of size target that the district has established or should be held to as you move forward. As we look at Sudlow as our second example, again, color coding by grade level and by function and program, so we can determine what percentage utilization rate to apply. 3 full floors there. And then a lot of detail here showing, you can see take a classroom, the gymnasium can serve 50 to 70 students at a time, but we're applying only a 65% utilization rate to it because we don't have enough students needing PE to utilize 60 to 70 students 100% or even 88% of a day. So it's making those adjustments, working with your leadership team, reviewing your schedules to make sure that we're appropriately accommodating that. And then the same thing at West. This gets pretty redundant, especially when you see the full report, right? You're going to go building by building. That's why I think when you do get into the report, kind of page 8 and page 9 is really where the simple depiction of current capacity for all of your schools are. But we don't want to hide the detail. There's a lot of effort and a lot of work by your team and ours that has gone into this. So we're happy to take questions from you on capacity as we move into our second Q&A for the evening.
Do any board members have questions? Director Hayes.
Could you go over the flex classrooms?
So what we labeled flex classrooms as right now are classrooms, rooms that are classroom size. So they might be 800 to 900 square feet. So they could house a full-size first, second, third grade classroom, but they aren't currently. So that would be a good example. I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to see more flex classrooms likely at schools that are quite under capacity, meaning that they have, as I noted before, kind of taken over a classroom, which is appropriate. When you have available space, you use it. But it's really a larger space that's not being utilized as a traditional classroom environment and could be. Great question. Does that help answer that one? Okay.
Director back.
Have you all factored in any self-contained classrooms for special programs in ESL classroom or something like that?
Yeah, and I'll ask John to speak to the specifics on that piece.
So some of that, if you look at the building plans, some of that gets labeled special education, sometimes it's dedicated within a building. In buildings, Sudlow might be one of the easier ones. You see a series of smaller rooms that are not calculated into the capacity study. It's because they house those one-on-one, two-on-one, four-on-one programs such as ESL, reading and comprehension. So those are pulled out of the capacity study. Some of those programs have been occurring in what we're labeling as flex classrooms, and that's purely because you've had the space to use, and so they've moved into there. Where the ILDs and principals have gone back to look is to say, well, we've filled that space because it's available, but if we needed that capacity, we could make use of it for classroom.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do need to add something. John, will you go, or Nat, will you go back? I think the numbers you stated got lost in translation. So when we were trying to bring stuff up, we were talked about our enrollment, and then we talked about our capacity. So will you just one more time review the overall capacity that we have? Because I think you stated that earlier, and the connection that we have between our enrollment.
Yeah, so the Roffers report, as you noted, he broke down K6, 7, 8, 9, 12, our current available rounded numbers on those summary slides of what our excess capacity is. Excuse me. That's most easily found on pages 8 and 9 of the detailed summary that you have in your binders this evening. The only thing to note is that the Roffers study didn't look at our pre-5K programming. So you will see within page 8 and 9, the children's villages included at both Hoover and West. And we've also included, there's a handful of schools that have an individual 4K classroom within them. So those are included in the page 8 and 9 summary in your detailed handout. Those are not factored into the Roffers report. So when you look at the Roffers report and page 8 and 9, they'll be slightly different. That's the reason why. Overall, though, we're showing an excess capacity of 3 to almost 50, or just over 5,600 seats. So 3,100 to 5,600 seats across the district, 4K through 12th grade today. That does not factor in. That is compared to the 2021-2022 enrollment level. That does not factor in the projected additional decrease of 750-ish students that Mark just introduced to you. So I think it reaffirms many of the conversations that we've had at the FMPC level, but also I believe at the board level about the need to have a serious discussion around right sizing. And as I started this, aligning enrollment with capacity, not just enrollment today, but projected enrollment. And then we'll start to work on those valves as I've noted. Thank you for reminding me. That's great, TJ.
Do any board members have any questions? Student board members, do you have any questions? None at this time? All right. No other questions from the board on this part?
We're rolling right along. Thank you, board. Section P4 of your full report in front of you is the facility condition assessment. I'm going to walk through and give you a summary of that document as well. So this is a piece of the process that, as you can imagine, with the number of school buildings, the varying age, the size, we're just about done. So we have 3 main pieces left. Plumbing, HVAC, and electrical engineers have 3 buildings left to get to. They left Central for the end. I'm not surprised that they left Central for the end. But so we're close here, and I think we just want to give you the flavor of how to interact with these documents and give you a summary of what we're finding, but we will get you a final version of this report when it's done. It's an over 600-page report across 2 volumes right now, and we're going to walk you through generally what's included in that report when you see it. So we've included two versions of this. The executive summary really is going to be probably the document that most people in the community interact with. But also, as I noted in the capacity study, we're not hiding the details. They're available. They're there for those engineers and contractors out there that want to dive into every last detail. We're good with that. That's important. We want them to understand and see. Again, there's nothing to hide. This is really just a status check or a health check on where your facilities are today. It's important to note as we get into this that this is not, the majority of the needs here are not born out of neglect. They're not born out of a lack of care or a lack of maintenance. The vast majority of this work is really just born out of age of building. You have of buildings that are generally aging. You're very normal. Most districts your size and of your era in terms of original construction are facing very similar things. So each school within the district will have kind of an existing building summary dashboard that will show the original age of construction, when schools were built, some enrollment information related to classroom, the square footage size, how a typical classroom within that building compares. So just a simple one-page summary to give you a flavor, in this case for Truman. How was that arrived at? We also then went and did building tours. So our architectural teams have been on site, toured each of the schools, created existing building floor plans that were accurate. Just that in and of itself is a monumental effort and something that will serve the district well moving forward. That we actually have kind of a singular location whereby we have accurate floor plans. I will note that when we share this out publicly, those floor plans we're going to either remove them or cover them just for safety purposes. We don't want to make very easily available public documents so people could study the actual organization of the schools. So we're sharing them this evening, but when we do share this more broadly, that is the reason why we won't be sharing the detailed floor plans. Thank you, TJ. I know. I've been hanging around you too much. Building systems is a critical piece. It's probably 40% of the cost of most projects. So plumbing, HVAC, electrical, life safety would be things like fire alarms, communication systems within your schools. Not only critical to the success of the building, but a major component in costs associated with not only constructing, but maintaining and operating your schools. So those are almost completed, and those have been completed by the plumbing, HVAC, and electrical engineers from the IMEG team. So a good local engineering firm. Again, our architectural team began to identify different interior and exterior components of the buildings that were in need of some attention. This is subjective. You could walk the building and add 10 things you think should be on the list, or say, no, that's not important, it shouldn't be. So fully acknowledge that as you go through that, there is some subjectivity to this type of work, because everybody might have a different expectation or a different opinion on what should be or could be improved. We looked at Americans with Disabilities Act. So this, as you can imagine, is a huge part, especially in some of your older buildings. How are we doing in terms of accessibility? This isn't to point out areas that you need to go immediately invest in. Your district does a great job accommodating students, adjusting programming if there's a section of a school whereby a student can't get to because of a physical limitation or some other concern. But it's critically important as we take this next step in the next year ahead as to how we invest, if we invest in existing buildings. We're going to want to make sure that when we invest in a school building that we are addressing ADA needs. So this Americans with Disabilities Act report will be a key piece as we advance. Also, I think as you see in the detailed document, we're trying to make these very interactive and easy to interact with. This report 5 years ago would have been 1,000 pages of written word, and nobody would have wanted to spend any time with it. Not that a lot of people will want to spend hours upon hours with it, but we want to make this interactive. We want the community and those that are engaging with it to see a pretty simple and graphic depiction of what we're dealing with, and not have to interpret jargon and a lot of descriptive language. So hopefully as you get to spend some time with this, you will see that as well. We looked at sites. How are your parking lots, drives, sidewalks? You have a lot of acreage of building or site in the district, and with that comes a lot of acreage of concrete, asphalt, playgrounds, things that need attention. We've also documented and begun to grade and rate those site components for you on a building by building basis. So a quick case study on Sudlow up on the screen, and you'll have it in your handout again this evening. This is the simple interactive document built in 1917. A lot of additions over the years, 23, 57, 63, 65, et cetera. So giving a good sense of history. It's about a 119,000 square foot building. But you will see that the classrooms are a little bit undersized by comparison to today's standards. Now, that's just an average, right? It's not every classroom, but that is just an indication that we maybe have a little smaller than ideal educational environment for some of our classrooms. Existing sites and buildings, talks about how many buses we're dealing with and some key takeaways specific to the site. Existing floor plans, breeze through those. The plumbing report, HVAC report, electrical report are in process, but you'll see those will have kind of a summary with a grade, so it'll be a good, fair, poor rating, and then it'll give you a description along with a color coding of each of the different components of those different system types. The interior condition, so documenting with a number and doing a pullout with a photo describing what that potential issue or challenge might be. So again, hopefully a picture connecting to that challenge will help people understand the need. And as you can imagine with these multi-floor buildings, that section of the report gets long. Exterior analysis, same thing, starting to document any visible. This is not exhaustive. We didn't rent scaffolding and climb every square foot of every building, but it's visually identifying areas of need and then working with your facilities team who has a good understanding of where they're facing challenges today to get that documented within the report. The ADA report, as I described before, again, calling out specific challenges within the building and then coding that to what the specific challenge is that we're looking to address in the future. Site assessment, and a nice aerial calling out on a numbered basis what the existing condition is. And then overall summaries. So this is likely where most people will spend their time. This is also included in your handout this evening. It's not final, but it's a single page summary with a color-coded good, fair, poor, or some combination of those of the major lenses by which we evaluated the facilities. So this is a pretty simple way for those of us that just want a quick look. They want the Cliff Notes version of how are we doing. This is just a simple way to interact with them, and hopefully a simple, once you get the hang of it, you'll get a sense of what's there. You can always dig deeper, but the goal is to provide, as I noted before, a simple single-page summary. Fair condition doesn't mean it needs, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Good condition, for example, doesn't mean it doesn't need anything. This is, again, a little bit subjective when we start evaluating and rating things. But without it, it really gets difficult, and there's just a lot of technical information. So hopefully you find these single-page documents. We think they're just a simple way to interact with this report and allow you to get a quick sense or temperature check on where each of your school buildings are. So again, those are each in your handout this evening as well. So with that, again, President Goss, I'll turn it back to you to field any questions from the board.
Director Beck.
So the one question I have is some of course, the older buildings in particular have some historical value. They have an aesthetic that matches, the neighborhood around them or something like that. Like I said, particularly the older buildings. And so is that, and I'm guessing that some of them perhaps maybe on I don't know if any of our buildings are on a historical register or anything like that, but potentially. So these are things that we would then have to want to take into consideration, correct, as we decide what happens with these buildings and whether they can remain school buildings or not. Is that?
That's a correct analysis. Yeah, we did not identify kind of the subjective architectural value of a building through this process. This is really just regardless of whether it was built last year or 75 years ago. Where does it sit today? the next steps in the process, we'll absolutely have to start considering the historical quality, character, if it's on the register or not. If it is on the register, what does that mean in terms of limitations, if any, to improvements that need to be made?
Okay. And I know, different parts of the city have been built, of the cities have been built at different times, and the building generally sort of, the school buildings that were built at the same times as the houses tend to sort of blend in with one another. And so it can be incongruous to then put in, the 2022 version of a school in a neighborhood that was built in 1952, right? And so I guess I want to make sure that we take some of that into consideration as well.
Yeah, and it's probably no surprise, that we all drive by and love Central. But when you get into Central and you start to get into those plumbing systems and again, that doesn't mean you walk away from a building. It's just an acknowledgement of it is a beautiful historic building, but that inherently can come with some challenges, and that's what we're trying to unearth here.
Okay.
What we do moving forward, that's not what this report is about. It's about making sure we understand current condition and current need, so that as we're making decisions moving forward, that's one additional lens we can look at a building through. We have capacity, we have existing condition, we have location. There's a bunch of lenses, right, that we're going to collectively use when we start making some decisions. This is just another lens that we need to have a good, solid understanding of before we go through that process.
Director Poston.
So a number of the buildings, as far as interior condition overview, are rated poor. What would be the top 2 or 3 that contribute to that score?
Yeah, I'll have John speak to that. The other thing I should have noted, and I did not, I apologize, this also does not look at educational adequacy. This has not begun to look at how would we want our school buildings to support the way teaching and learning happens today and into the future. It hasn't gone there. Again, this next level of evaluation of solutions will begin to study how we can effectively integrate, improved environments to support teaching and learning as we move forward. You forget the question though?
I'll wing it. No. Okay, so on interior condition, typically a couple of the things that are most critical to the interior tend to do with door openings, walls, penetrations through exterior. We tend to see a lot of degradation historically around the inside of the exterior envelope. We also tend to see a lot of issues that will drive the rating of a building towards fair or poor that deal with ADA and accessibility. But the other piece of this that tends to be a big driving factor is bathrooms, and that will hit interior condition and ADA both in nearly almost every building throughout the district. Most of these buildings that have not had significant renovation remodeling, those bathrooms were configured prior to the advent of the ADA rules. And those also, when they have had work done, tend to have not dug in and actually replaced the systems that supply those, so your water and sewer systems. And so what we tend to see is degradation of materials, finishes, and the systems that support those spaces. So that's kind of a snapshot.
Any other questions? Student board members, you got any questions?
No.
All right, well, we will move to the final chapter of tonight's discussion, and I'm going to ask I'll do a brief intro. So we are using the terminology pathway at the Facility Master Planning Committee level to begin exploring, and we did not, keep in mind, we did not have the enrollment projection work until last week. So these pathways, as you see them tonight, and the targets really were not based on projections. They were based on current enrollments. We are projecting and working on suggested grade configuration, school quantities, I'll say macro level district organizations, but we're kind of working in a utopian world where we're starting from scratch, or we're on an island, as we've been talking about. Don't worry about the little stuff. Don't worry about the nuances. Like, what if we were starting from scratch with a 14,000 student Davenport Community School District, what would that look like? What's the best grade configuration? What's the right transition configuration? How do we potentially provide a very predictable pathway so that when in third, fourth, fifth, or sixth grade in an elementary school, I'm transitioning with my peers in that building to the same intermediate or junior high or middle school so that we're not splitting students that they have created friendships and relationships with. So we're going to walk through that next. This is a great chance for any of the committee members that want to speak to this process, because this has been a big piece of what you guys have really led for us as we've gone through.
Matt, before we get started, can we start with some introductions?
Yes, please.
You want to get us going, Rob, from the left?
Yeah, I'm Rob Leverage, Davenport parent, proud parent. I have a student at Garfield, a student at Sudlow, and a student at Central High School.
I'm Chris Miller. I teach at Jefferson Elementary School. I've been there since 1997.
I'm Amber Ford. I am a parent. I am a graduate of Davenport Central. I have 3 daughters who all graduated from Central. It was so much fun. I decided to do it again, and I have a 7-year-old.
Hello, I'm Cassandra Hill. I have 2 children at West, 1 at Smart, and 1 at Hayes. My youngest child will be in kindergarten next year, so I have 5 kids that'll be in Davenport next year. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Would any of you want to touch on kind of the process to date, or do you want me to roll through it and you guys can jump in and support as we go? We didn't script this, as you can tell, so. Do you want me to lead and then you guys jump in, or do you?
You can lead if you want.
Do I want to lead? You see how I talk in these meetings. All right. So what you have in your binder this evening, the last tab of your book, is a summary of the work that the committee's been doing. So the first 2 pages, and I'll scroll through them up on the screen, are a summary of existing conditions. So, foundational to any conversation is understanding what we have. So this document in a couple pages summarizes current enrollment, capacity. We use the terminology tracks for an elementary school. That's the number of classrooms per grade level. So if we say it's a 3-track or a 4-track elementary school, some would say that's a 3 or 4 section elementary school. That would mean 3 sections of first grade, 3 sections of second grade, et cetera. This gives the information on the original year built, when there was major additions and renovations, building size, and site acreage. So again, trying to, in a simple, single location, summarize what we have in terms of our current inventory. So we have 17 elementary schools serving kindergarten through 6th grade. Uh-oh. Somebody took over. All right. We have 1 K-8 school. I think we probably are well aware of Walcott. And then we have 4 junior highs serving 7th and 8th grade. And we have our 4 high schools, 3 of which are West Central, North, and then, of course, Mid-City serving us. So that is just, again, foundational information for the group. What we did then is explore, was it 15-ish? Does that sound about right, roughly? Pathways. There was many, and it was overwhelming at times. But we explored collectively 15 potential pathways. And again, these were not done with specific buildings that you currently have in district in mind at all. This is about what is the best case scenario if we could start from scratch to offer our students the best grade configuration, et cetera. So we've spent a lot of time on this, probably 3 meetings. We've got a few meetings left. And at the last couple meetings, we've just been doing some real quick temperature checks with them and using a dot exercise. So green, if it's an option that you as an individual committee member were really excited about seeing move forward. Yellow is, I can get behind it. I'm not opposed to it, but I might have some questions yet. And then red would be, I'm just not interested in exploring it further. I have severe reservations. So that is noted up under major components on each of these. And right now they're organized in your binder and in the presentation based on the largest quantity of green and yellow. So full support and could get behind. So this first pathway, 3B in this case, it would be a kindergarten through 4th grade, 5th through 6th grade, 7th through 8th grade configuration. High school work is still to come. We're generally kind of focusing on K-8 here. Grade configuration. And you can see this also acknowledges that we would have 12 elementary schools, 5 intermediates, 3 junior highs. It gives you the rough student size. This really just becomes a reverse engineering math exercise around total number of students in our K-8 population. How do they break down on a per grade level basis? So we have X number of 7th graders, et cetera. So nothing specific to your buildings, really just starting to talk about how does this look. And so the group's been thinking, we had probably a few spirited discussions around where should 6th graders be? Should they be with 5th graders? Are they better with 7th graders? Should they not be with either? So that's been good. It's like really good, healthy dialogue. We've got educators in the room. We've got parents in the room. It's been a good discussion. Not that there aren't other things discussed, but that's been, as you can imagine, one of the areas of focus with that 6th grade move being somewhat new as well to some of the families in the district. So this scenario would move our 5th and 6th graders into intermediate schools, and then would maintain our junior high model, but potentially would go to fewer junior highs as we move forward. 3A, and I'm not going to go through all 15. I'll just do a handful, and you can definitely spend time on these on your own. If you have questions, we're welcome. Happy to come back. The next option is a K-4 elementary school, and then a 5th through 8th grade building. So it's a little bit of a tweak, and I think I will speak on behalf of the committee. Please jump in if you think I'm misstating some of the things that the committee's talked about. Is one thing that they've spent a lot of time thinking about is how do we, the more sections per grade level that we are able to put in a building. So if we have, in this case, 5 classrooms of kindergarten in one building, that's 5 kindergarten teachers that are going to be able to collaborate and work together. It inherently creates a smaller or more stable average class size because we just have more kindergarten students within that building, so we can spread them out and have a smaller class size across the district. And it allows us to draw larger attendance areas. So when we draw a larger attendance area to create 550 kindergarten through 4th grade students, it has a higher likelihood that if a student moves through a year, there's a less likelihood that they're going to be moving to 2, 3, 4, 5 different school buildings throughout their year or throughout their experience within the district. I generally would say that when we get to 5-8, there's one big caveat that keeps coming up is this is not a 5th grader walking down the hall with an 8th grader. Is that fair?
Yes.
This is a concept where we have a 5th, 6th environment and a 7th, 8th environment, and we have the shared resources of STEM and tech ed and world languages and all the things that we would love to get to our 5th and 6th graders sooner, but logistically is difficult. I think we've got instrumental music, if I remember correctly, traveling a lot, right? Building to building to building to access our 5th and 6th graders. This would allow the students in a hypothetical world access to those in kind of a self-contained 5, 6, and 7, 8 experience, but get them access to a lot of those courses a little bit earlier and easier. Pathway 2B went to, I guess, what I would call probably in the Midwest, kind of a tried and true kindergarten through 5th grade, 6th through 8th grade model. You were just there, right? So it's something Davenport is used to and has experienced before. 5A is a little bit different. It's K3, 4, 6, 7, 8. So as you can see, we just then all these subsequent options really just start to break down those grade levels more and more. As we got to the end of this, we started to play around with what if 9th grade came out, what if 8th grade went up. Those didn't get as much excitement or love from the committee. Not surprising. You're not unique in that way. Whenever we do these exercises, the more severe the change, the harder it is to understand and the less likely we are to be interested in it. This was a little interesting, and I think we've got a little bit of unpacking to do on this at the committee level is, why is our current model of K6, 7, 8, we're not totally in love with it yet. So I think at the committee level, we've got a little bit of work to do just to unpack and figure out the whys behind that. It's a good grade configuration. It's successful. It works for many districts, including you right now, but I think we'll want to learn a little more. And then I'll jump to the end with high schools. This is just an exercise that we did last week with them, so this is not final. Where are we? See, there's a lot of options. We did explore K-8. So what if we went exclusively K-8s across the district as a scenario? That comes with a bunch of logistical challenges. You can see some individual committee members' opinions on that model. There's somebody working with me here. We're getting close. Where is it? There they are. So, and then we also kind of had some scenarios for the high school. What if we stay 4 high schools? So the specialized high school at 250, that's hypothetically mid-city. We're just trying to accommodate that could be part of your long-range plan. So this is 3 roughly 1,600 student high schools. In option B, this would be a change from 3 high schools to 2. And then this option C was what I think we'll find from our dot exercise from last week was not a very an option that people were too excited about, but it was a model where we would have gone 9-10 in a building and 11-12 in a building, so all students had the same experience. Has its hurdles, has its challenges, but it's a model that's used, and again, we're trying to not take anything off the table as we start this macro level brainstorming. But the committee's done a great job really starting to narrow where they're heading, and the next couple of meetings is going to be working on what 1, 2, or 3 pathways that they want to bring forward to the board as their recommendation. So I'd turn it to committee members initially. Anything you'd like to add for the board this evening?
I will. One of the things that noticed me when we were going through the configurations is like the top 5 choices. Not one of those included a K6 model. It was either K5, K4, broken down that way. I just think it's one of the things that a lot of people in this committee, teachers like myself and other parents and people just like the 6th grade entity in elementary schools just hasn't been as successful as I think people were hoping. I just think from a management perspective, when it's a pre-K through 6 building, you're expecting a principal and somebody to manage 7 grade levels versus other buildings where they're managing 2 grade levels. So I just thought that we've been talking about that in this committee as this has been going. And then after we did the dot exercises, I was very happy personally that a K6 option just wasn't on it. I think we can do things differently. I think when you go into a K4, K3 like scenario, I think it's beneficial for teachers as well because their PDs can be more focused on the early lit part for the K3. I just think there's a lot of benefits to that, and I think that really showed throughout our discussion in the committee and then the results of the dot exercise and stuff. So.
Will you share your mic with? Of course.
When I was asked to do this,
Pull it closer.
Oh, sorry. When I was asked to do this project, my thought after the first meeting was, this is just gonna turn into a fighting, screaming match daily. It was, you're very emotional about these grades and these schools, and especially for myself, who I grew up in this city. My kids all have been here, but it's been great conversations, and I started with a theory of one way that I really was passionate about, and then listening to teachers and other parents, it was like, okay, I see your point. So it's been very nice to be able to collaborate with other parents and teachers. And again, like I said, I've been in this district for 25 years, and never have I been asked my opinion on what my school is going to look like for my children. So I commend you all for putting this together and asking our opinions, because I've been the parent who got the email that said, hey, here's what's going to happen. And I was like, who did you ask? So I thank all of you for, wanting to put this committee together.
Oh, yeah, I can talk.
They're all going to talk.
I'll get you. I'll do board members and
I have to agree with her that I really like the open and positive dialogue. I've also loved each week having people even from the board visit. I believe it was Mr. Potts who came and talked to us. And I really liked how he had mentioned in the meeting, he said, just so you know, we're not doing this meeting to expect a specific outcome. Like, we're, you know, giving you the information and everything's just gonna be brand new. They also, with all of these different school differentials that we're looking at, they also gave us advantages and opportunities and disadvantages and challenges and question and comments about each demographic. That also was extra information for helping us decide. And I really loved hearing from the educational standpoint for the way that they teach. Like, with sixth graders being in the elementary schools, like, we were told that for maturity level, it's just too high for them to be at elementary, especially for being role models for younger students and walking in the same hallways. One teacher also said that with 7th and 8th grade in one school, they don't get to spend enough time with the kids. You know, they get them in 7th grade, and then, you know, they get to spend time with them, like, hey, welcome to the school. And then 8th grade, they're like, let's get you prepared for high school so we can get you out of here. And that was really interesting to hear as well. And it's just been an amazing opportunity to hear all the discussions and everything going on.
I'll echo what has been said and also say I've been humbled by the process, and I've also grown in my appreciation for the staff and faculty of our schools. I was already highly appreciative and very, very thankful for the job people were doing. But one of the things that I have been so glad to have the opportunity to do is at each time we've met at a different school at each meeting. And then at the close of the meeting, the staff of the school, some volunteers, volunteer staff from the school would take groups on tours of the buildings. And I'm really glad that I've taken the opportunity to stay and go, because these have been very thorough and exhaustive tours of these school buildings, and they've really opened my eyes to the situation that our population of students is in. And it is different. It is very different depending on where you go to school and what the situation is in the building. So that's been extremely illuminating and also humbling, sort of really understanding a little bit better the challenges that we're facing trying to educate our community of children. And so I'm very, very thankful for all that. And I would just say, just to underscore how humbling the process has been, I don't really feel like, speaking to other colleagues on the committee, we don't actually feel a great deal of clarity about what is the best path forward. And the night that we did the DOTS exercise, we were at Walcott, which is a K-8, and it's a wonderful school. And we did this DOT exercise, and that everything was going to be tabulate all of our input. And then I went on this tour after that, and it was the principal of the school who gave us the tour, and he just gave us this entire really excellent presentation about what the school is like, what the dynamics are, how they arrange things, how they deploy resources, and then all showing us everything about the facility. And at the end of that tour, I said, gosh, I want to redo my dots. I really want to go back there and change my dots around. And it's just, that's an example of how it is a humbling process. And so to invest the time and the energy in really discerning, what is going to be our best path forward so that we can have confidence moving into the next 10 and 20 years. I'm just really thankful for that.
And I'm going to throw in one more thing too. I know we've been talking about right sizing the district a lot, is the phrase that you hear a lot. And just, we also have to think about it facility wise too, with our 5th and 6th graders in an elementary school, just like the gym, for example. I'm a former PE teacher at Jefferson Elementary School too. Having 26 kids in a gym at Jefferson Elementary School, just like many other elementary schools, it's hard because the gym's just not big enough. So I'm hoping that one of the results of all of this is that we right size the district the way it is, but also for the kids and the facilities that they're in as well. Because 26 kids in a gym like Jefferson, Monroe, it's not a big enough facility for them to have a true engaging experience. That's just a P example, but right sizing, yes, that's correct, but the facility is getting to match that as well.
Hang on a sec. I'm going to call on the student board members first this time, and then you both were jumping out of your chairs.
I just had a question about the 5 through 8 option like building. So would 5th grade and 6th grade still be the one classroom, one teacher, and then 7th and 8th grade would continue to do the periods? Is that how it would work?
Yeah, I don't think we have landed that yet. In my experience, that has traditionally been how it has been handled in
Okay.
other 5-8 opportunities, but we have not gone to that level of detail yet. Great question.
Thank you.
I love everybody's variety of opinions and how everybody's from like different areas and has kids everywhere in the district, different ages. But are we making this committee aware to all the other parents in the community? Because I know if I was a parent and I heard that there was a committee planning on like the next 10 years of my kid in the district, I'd want to like be able to be made aware of this and like contribute appropriately to it. So how are we spreading the word that you're a thing and what you're planning on doing besides just these open forums?
Yeah, I don't know, TJ, if you want to speak to it. I'm hoping they're all watching tonight. I'm guessing they're not. But that's a great point you make, that we do have to make sure that a broader section of our parent community gets involved in this. This will eventually end when we have a recommended plan from the board with a community survey that will be sent to every home in the school district. So not just parents, but also what we call the non-parent, non-staff, which is 75% of your community. So every mailbox will receive this in the mail, and that's where we're going to get our data. But your point is right on, that we need to get more people engaged. Great
Yeah,
point.
I even wrote on my little note card here, like we have big open forums here for lots of different things, but maybe even like a committee open forum where you could say, hey, on our district social media that we have the 10-year plan committee meeting. You could come and give your ideas that way. At the end, when you do find this like final plan that all of you guys agree on, there won't be so much disruption within the community. So everybody had a chance to put in their opinions prior to the big argument and issue.
Excellent point. Thank you.
We are capturing all of the meeting notes on the website. So as a public service announcement on our district website, you can see all the meeting notes. But as a potential next step, we could potentially put any kind of feedback that you would like to give to the committee. Please leave it here. We've done that in the past, and that's been very successful. So to get the voice of all, that would be another good suggestion. So thank you. Excellent.
Can I just elaborate on that? I'll also say that as a parent, like I am PTO president at SMART, and okay, we'll trade.
Try again.
Thanks. All right. So we were given permission to talk to people about what's going on, just to kind of get a discussion going. And I'm a PTO president at SMART. And so actually at our last meeting, I kind of brought it up a little bit and told them about our committee and got a discussion going. And I know that there's a lot of other PTO moms that are on this committee as well. Just because as far from what I'm aware is that the principals of each school chose like a teacher and a parent. So like I was chosen by the principal of Hayes because I used to be PTO at Hayes. So there is word out there. It's kind of like a word of mouth thing, kind of like who you know. Like there's no public posting about it, but just discussions about it.
Yeah, I definitely think this is the first step. Like I talked about this with my staff the other day, just to let them know that this is a part of the committee that I'm doing. This is the drive that we're doing. These are the things that we've been talking about, and just to open up the discussion to them. Because I said, you know, I obviously have my ideas and my input, but I want yours as well. So I've already had multiple staff members like reach out to me like, what, so you guys trying with this, that. So I think the word is getting out there now.
And you guys discussed how you all had like different opinions and you're very emotional about it at first. So I think that this is like the best time to like get that out there. So that way the community goes through it with you as well. So it's not just like you guys are all good and dandy with each other and then the community's like, no. So maybe just like go through it as a community and include the committee.
I think that is the nice part about it. There's teachers, parents.
Right.
They did a good job of selecting the group that's there for sure.
I'll give you my business card. You can come do community facilitation for us. You have great thoughts. I really appreciate them.
Is that it over there?
You have anything, Adrian?
I think we're done now.
Okay. All right, we'll go with Karen Gordon and then I'll.
Actually, Bree kind of led into what I wanted to ask. What is the racial diversity makeup of this committee? Are we having Black and brown voices of teachers and parents included in this current committee before it goes out as a poll to the community?
I don't know if you're going to speak to it, TJ.
It is not at the level that we would like it to be. There's a very minimal participation of Black and brown in this committee. So we are creating another committee of stakeholders, and it has a different purpose for it that we will be convening very shortly to kind of do a second round of that to ensure that we have that voice that's on there. So I don't know if you guys remember a while ago, but I've asked board members for community members that would be good members on there. And we're also brainstorming other members of the community that would be good members to represent that voice that you're talking about. So that was an audible that we had to do when we showed up, saw the racial makeup of the committee, and we do have a plan for that. The plan comes into place here very soon. So the stakeholders of that will not be getting down into the weeds of this, but we will be sharing a very similar presentation level of input will be needed to move forward. So great question, and that's something that we have been concerned about.
And then I just wanted to follow that up too. How about the families with students with special needs? Are parents and teachers of that? So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I could just speak to the way these last questions and comments sort of intersect. So I mentioned that I have students at 3 schools, and so I won't name the names of the schools or the principals, but I was asked directly in a direct outreach by the principal of one of my kids' schools to be on this committee. And I inquired, can I learn more about this? We had back and forth communication, and I said, oh yeah, definitely I'll do this. And then within around that same day, I literally got the general school email from another one of my kids' schools. And so I always sort of read the email, but come on, I skim the email. And I was sort of casually skimming it, and I saw a very, very vague sort of mention of there's this new committee, and if there's any parents who might be interested in being on this committee, email so-and-so. And I was like, oh, hey, that is definitely the committee that I was just directly asked to be on. And so I was aware of it, but I definitely had that moment of going, oh, I definitely would not have clicked on this email so-and-so, otherwise. And I wouldn't have been on this committee, therefore, if that was the only information I'd ever gotten about it. And so if we're seeing that we have less representation in certain parts of our community than we want, I really think just some very conscientious and focused direct outreach to people that's going to get us the representation that we need.
And kind of bouncing off of that, that's really good that your kids' principals know you, because obviously it shows you've been involved in their education in school. But a lot of parents don't have time for that, so that's where I like that you pointed out we need to have direct contact with those people, just get everybody. It's great that some parents are involved, but a lot of people aren't able to be that involved and know who their child's principal is. So we just really need to reach out to everybody and just get a wide variety. So this is a great start. We need to continue.
I also think if there's another round of principal outreach, because parents do take into account principals very heavily. So if the principals were to directly do another round of, hey, let's select more people, maybe a little bit more diverse, then I think people would take it a lot more seriously if it's coming directly from the principal.
That's who sent the information out, right? The building principals?
Yes.
The building principals are the ones that were supposed to send that out, so I would charge the superintendent to charge the ILDs to get in their principals and get some stuff done.
And I think that the principals have a lot on their hands. Like, I don't know anything about administration, but like I work in the office first block, so I see some of the stuff that goes on, and like the amount of things that they have to do is like ridiculous, but it is like comes with their job. So maybe we could like try to reach out to some other people because they have a lot on their plate and there's just a lot to do. So I think a step that we could take is just, I see the district social media on Facebook, so maybe we could just like do something as small as just like saying, hey, contact whomever, and that way we know we tried and we put it out there, and if they didn't see it, I mean, it is what it is.
Director Klein Jerome.
And all these plans, I do not see preschool included in that. And a long time ago, we used to actually have preschools in buildings, and then we moved them out separately. Where does preschool fall in this?
Excellent question. And I mistakenly didn't point out as we were going through that these are the macro level framework. And as we narrow, we will start to massage different parts and pieces in. Where is 4K? Where is preschool? It's probably not going to be an across the board. Let's say we go K4, 5, 8. That we don't have enough students on the western side of the district potentially to have a K4 the size that we're suggesting here. But it's also impossible to start massaging the district demands across 15 pathways. So you're absolutely on the right track. Once we narrow this to the 2 or 3, whatever we elect to go forward, we're going to start massaging in those different parts and pieces. 4K, preschool, is there a K8 model selectively, either in town or at Walcott? That all will start to get massaged into this once the pathways are narrowed. Thank you for pointing that out. I should have as I got started.
Was that it?
That was
Director Beck.
I'm glad we had that conversation because that's actually something that was really important to me. Even, I mean, every committee that we've put together, I wanted to make sure we were reaching those corners of our community that we don't always hear from. My question was, with these pathways, some of them, like I guess the most popular one had like 50-something votes listed, but the least popular ones maybe only had like 27 votes altogether. So I guess with such small numbers, I'm a little concerned that that's not really a reflection of how people feel about these models. So can you explain why there's a disparity there?
Yeah, every committee member had 5 dots of each color, so red, green, yellow. So if they felt super strong about one, they could put all 5 in one location, or they could spread 5 across. So
okay,
that's why. It's not scientific. It was just to try to get a quick check of where we were at as a group.
that explains a lot.
Excellent questions.
Director Poston.
I know you haven't taken a deep dive into the high schools, but as far as our CTE programs and that, is there going to be some different scenarios there as far as that, participation in our high schools?
Yeah, and I will say, not even specific to Davenport, if there is a high school project, it has to and almost exclusively involve some major investment in CTE across the region. We're obviously responding to the demand from industry and the high-paying jobs that grow out of those student participation in CTE. So not specific to Davenport, but regionally, I will go out on a limb and say it will be a huge focus when we get to landing the plane here in Davenport.
Dr. Beck?
Sorry, just one other question. When you talked about the different models, and I really love the idea that you guys kind of went in this fresh, and we have no idea what you guys are doing or what these were. This is totally new to us too, just so you know. You said that you had like a document that had sort of pros and cons and things for each model. I'm wondering if, as we're asked to put our opinions in, and other community members just in general are asked to put their opinions in, if those are, that type of information can be shared, because, you know, I'm speaking for myself, I look at some of these models and I'm like, no way would I want to do that. But if I can see some of the advantages and disadvantages of what each one brings, then I'm going to have a more, you know, a better idea of what I'm getting with each one of these.
That's great feedback, and I believe, TJ, correct me if I'm wrong, that was built by ILDs and Cabinet, is that correct? So I think that's a document we can easily share with the board as well.
Okay. And the public, I hope.
Yep, fair.
Director Potts.
Sixth graders are neither fish nor fowl. They're elementary when they're in elementary until about semester. And then they start becoming junior high. And the teachers say, it's been that way. When they come to junior high, start out as sixth graders, they're annoying. They tattle. They tattle. And then they all of a sudden become junior hires. So, yeah, the thing that I think they get offered when they're in the junior high is they get a more rigorous curriculum. They get daily math, they get daily science, they get daily social studies, they can have daily band, orchestra, choir instruction. It's a little stronger, more rigorous curriculum for them. Buildings are great. We like buildings. We like lovely buildings. We like big gyms and nice classrooms and electronic TV screens, but buildings don't teach anybody. It doesn't matter what the building, how old it is, it's the climate that gets created in that building by the staff, the students, the parents, and the teachers. And you can successfully educate kids in any building. Now, I'm not saying we should put a pup tent out there and say, hey, we're going cheap today. But I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds. That's all I'll say.
I'll say something. Can I say something?
I would also like to say, though, yes, sixth graders, they're elementary when they come in, and then they become junior high. Ninth graders are the same way.
Yes.
That I've taught where it was 7 through 9, I've taught where it's been 9 through 12, and they have that same issue.
I just wanted to share something. Matt had presented us with some pictures of other classrooms in other districts, and they were absolutely eye-opening. Just putting some windows in the shop, so when you walk down the hallway, you can look in there and be like, well, maybe that will pique an interest for a kid who never would have even looked down that hallway. Some of the open concept rooms, or there's a picture of one that's got it's almost like a garage door between two classrooms, but they can open it and collaborate between the two classrooms, when they want to, or, shut it down. So I went to these schools, so they have a special place in my heart, and walking through them, it's like, oh, I remember when band was here and music was there. I did that at Sudlow when we were there the other night. But that was my school. This needs to be for my son's school and how he's going to learn better. He's not going to learn sitting in a desk. I know that. He's my son. But he needs to be able to do different things, because what worked 15 years ago doesn't work today.
Kind of going off of what Mr. Potts said, I went to Smart for middle school, and we know that's like one of the oldest buildings in the district. And at the time I was there, it was not very, let's just say it's not like West, so it's very outdated. And of course you need like functioning toilets and stuff like that. But the climate that I experienced at Smart was like no other. Like, it was like a huge family. It was crazy. It was awesome. Like, all different types of people. And that, I think it's amazing that we're going over a 10-year facility plan, but I feel like we need to go over a 10-year mentality plan, because that's like a whole like mental game. It's not just, you can stick all of your students into the nicest school district, like, so let's just use Walcott for example. They just built a humongous school, right? We can stick everybody in there, and oh, they have great computers and stuff, but it's not going to do anything if their mentality's not right and they're not all working together. They don't all have the same thoughts. So I think that we need to come up with some sort of mentality plan too, because we can have the great facilities all we want, but it's not going to do anything if as people we're not doing anything.
Just going a little off of that. So I'm going into interior design, and the reason I wanted to do this is because I know that like the atmosphere you're in, you don't have to have like nice bright windows or like expensive things, but if you're in a bright atmosphere with colors or a number chart, like I want to stay awake, I want to learn. If I walk into a classroom and it's gray and it's boring carpets and stuff like that, I'm gonna be like this the whole time because I like there's nothing to look at, there's nothing to like engage with me. So I feel like having that atmosphere is important. It doesn't need to be expensive or like new doors or anything, but I think having that bright atmosphere that kids can engage with is important.
You two are awesome, and you're both getting business cards because we need interior designers too. So.
I can do that.
Any other questions from the board? For the parents participating as well as the staff, greatly appreciate it. I am from Davenport schools. I have 2 kids at North, 1 at Fillmore, and I will have a kindergartner next year, so I'm invested in this district all the way. But I'm all about the Wildcats. Sorry about the Blue Devils and the Falcons.
No.
But I greatly appreciate you giving up your evenings to do these, and now you kind of see what the board has to undertake, and you've only had a little bit of it so far. So it is a lot of information you got to take. I mean, we went through a couple hours here dabbling and all that. So there's a lot of variables, different factors that go into all this, but we do greatly appreciate you all helping us along the way and giving your input and feedback. Because at the end of the day, when everybody calls me about things, I'm going to direct them to you all.
They can take it, trust me.
Anything else from Miss Mayfield? You've been very quiet over there. I'm going to put you on the spot. You at least got to ask a question or something.
Yeah, I had a question a while ago. I was just a little quiet. Kind of going back to the diversity part of this. Do you guys have a plan for the next group coming in that you guys would create committee-wise, a ratio of what you guys would want with colored and brown people compared to you guys now?
So the committee that is going to be created right now is going to be half the size, probably maybe even smaller than that than this one. This committee's got 60 people on it. So right now we're looking at a smaller group, but a group of key stakeholders from the city, and so the ratio of that will be greater than that of the percentage of what the city has. So I think that's a good starting point, and that's what we typically operate off of. Great question. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Director Poston.
So Superintendent Sneckloff, then how will the city get involved in this process? Will they be part of this stakeholder group?
Absolutely. One of the members of that is actually that we're considering is actually Mrs. Spiegel, who has children in the district, but also all along the way the city has been very highly collaborative. The cities have been very highly collaborative throughout this process, whether it be talking about zoning and houses particularly that are going to be built. Matt, you care to expand on that?
Yeah, they've been very involved. All the municipalities have in the enrollment projection piece mainly. This is still a little too macro for us to sit down with each one and say, here's hypothetically what will happen on a building by building basis. That's what they're going to be excited to learn more about. But representation on our next committee, I believe, will be important.
I just want to make sure, so Mr. Schlechthoff, I can't even say your last name, I'm so sorry. So there's 60 people in your committee, right? And how many buildings are in the school? So I know there's at least over like 20 elementary schools. So that's like not even 2 people per school. So we just definitely need to expand a lot. And I think that will help in the future.
we can invite everybody in the world, but people don't show up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people on this committee. That's why one of my asks was that they took an attendance sheet
Right.
of all the people that were invited. People just don't show up. I mean, some people do, some people don't. It's just how people have different things going on. They have things with their kids, other things, jobs, things like that. So, I mean, there's different factors, but some people just choose not to show up and participate.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing we experience in schools right now is just not a lot of people engaging in things. But as long as the people who are making the decisions and people who have the ability to do things put their effort out there saying, hey, we reached out, and if they don't reach out, that's their problem, and then they can't really do anything about it. So.
Yeah, it's important. This committee was not built with the goal of excluding anybody at all.
Yeah.
It was attempting to bring a manageable number. We also couldn't do this process with use an extreme 500 people.
Right.
So the goal was to create representation across the district, all geographies, every building having at least one, if not two representatives. I'll go back to that survey, which will be sent to every home. That is a great way that every community member is going to get in their mailbox an 8-page flyer that's going to describe exactly what we've been, where we're going, the why behind it, and they're going to have a lot of questions where they're going to get to provide their feedback. So those super engaged, great, we want them, bring them on, we encourage it, but those that want to just participate at a I'll say more normal level with a survey, they're going to be able to provide their feedback as well.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
I was just going to emphasize sort of what Bree said earlier about personal outreach, and Mr. Leverage, you kind of said the same thing. I know when I get personally contacted by somebody to participate in something, I'm much more likely to do it. I read the emails, but I miss them as well. I miss things as well. And so I think, especially if we're trying to increase representation, finding those parents that don't normally participate in things and just reaching out, having meetings when people can make it, which isn't always the evening, is important as well, if we're really going to encompass the whole community.
Any other questions? You look like you got one more in you. No? All right. Any other questions? Thank you all for the deep dive. Greatly appreciate you all spending your Monday night with us.
Yeah, thank you, board. Good to see all of you. Thank you to the committee members. They're doing a great job, and looking forward to being back with you in the near future with a little more refinement. And hopefully we're getting closer every 2-3 weeks when we're together.
Nobody's gonna clap.
Yay. Very good.
Thank you all for participating in this process and for coming tonight to talk to us.
TJ, a question for you. This current group were a parent and a staff member. The next group, we have a lot of people in this district that are no longer parents or never were parents, but they're paying the taxes to this district too. Are we going to include?
That's what that survey does. That survey goes to every resident in the Davenport Community School District. That gives them the opportunity to give feedback into that. And one of the major selling points of why we wanted to go with Bray is because they ensured that the voice of everybody was heard. Because if you're going to move something forward, whether it be a bond or whatever you would need to do, you need to make sure you have the voice of everybody at the table. And so, in reviewing this survey, it's a really beautiful survey. That's sent out, very comprehensive, and it's very detailed about what we are trying, what we've done, where we are, and where we're going. So,
And we're going to ask a lot of demographic information, so you'll be able to break down by where somebody lives, by what school they attend, if they have kids in school, don't have kids in school, anything you can think of, you'll be able to sort and evaluate where that segment of your community is in terms of level of support.
Okay.
And that survey is not drafted. That doesn't even start getting drafted until we know what direction we're taking this in, and then we will be doing that work.
Is any of this going to be accompanied by like press releases, a media blitz, something like that, so people know it's coming? And honestly, if I got an 8-page survey in the mail, I'm not sure I'd fill it out.
They get about a 20% response rate, which is
Okay, that's pretty good.
Which is better than they predict elections based on 400 phone calls. So I will say larger districts tend to air down more like 17, 18 during the pandemic. It's actually been in the low 20% response rate. There's not a ton of questions. It might be 8 pages. It's an interactive newsletter more or less. So we're going to give graphics. We're going to help people understand where we're at with enrollment. And so there might be 10 questions across 8 pages.
Okay. Not 8 pages of text.
No. No, but again, we don't know what that looks like for you because until we know where we're heading, we can't write the survey.
Director Posture.
Karen brought up a good point as far as we need to engage our taxpayers. I mean, a lot of people in the district have no kids involved in the school, and whatever evolves from this whole process, there's probably going to be some bond referendums required. And so we're going to need the support of the whole community for something like that.
Yeah, the community survey will do one of two things. If a bond referendum is contemplated to fund some aspect of it, the question will be specific to would you support a bond referendum with a tax impact, and listing that tax impact and how it affects you to support the project. If there isn't a bond note anticipated, it would be written more as a planning survey whereby we're going to tell the story of where we've been, where we are, where we're heading, and what we would like to do, and really just get more data to support making a decision on what to do next. So most often there's a bond. I will agree. I don't think we're there yet. We don't know. But if there is, we'll have to lay that out with great clarity and definitely have the tax impact to a homeowner included on there so that they can make an informed decision.
Thank you for bringing that up, Director Poston. He'll include it in his presentation next time. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you for giving us your feedback as well and participating with us. Greatly appreciate it. You all don't have to hang out, but you sure can if you want. All right, we will move on to administrative reports.
None at this time.
Board request. All right, I have one board request. Name of board member, Director Gordon, date of request, February 28, 2022. Item request is an agenda item, description of request. I request a discussion on substitute retention and potential pay increase. Why are you making this request? It is my understanding that DCSD subs haven't had a pay increase in 5 years or so. They have helped keep our heads above water throughout COVID, and we need to plan to compensate them in a way that rewards their loyalty and facilitates their retention. When would you like this? As soon as possible. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any other board requests? All right, board reflections. I'll start with Director Kleindrum.
It was great presentation on the facilities. Eye-opening to me was that of all the building ratings, only 3 are considered good. The rest were in the fair category, but I've been in most of these buildings. I was kind of shocked that there were not more in the good rating, but gives us a lot to consider.
Thank you, Director Poston.
Well, I'd just like to thank this committee. I know they've left already, but appreciate all the time and effort that they're putting into this. I've sat in on 2 of their meetings. Hopefully we'll get to some more. But it's a huge time commitment, and you can tell by just they have a passion for this, and it's just so important to our district. And so I just appreciate everything that they're doing.
Thank you, Director Beck.
Yeah, I thought this was a great presentation on how we're thinking about moving the district forward. I think one thing that struck me is that we still have a lot of work to do in terms of reaching all of the voices in the district. But I think we're doing something that I haven't seen us do before, and that is bringing together people from every building in the district to really give us, from the beginning, their opinions, and we have no preconceived notion of what is expected to be decided, and I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Director Hayes?
I really enjoyed the long-range facility planning as well. Closing the attendance centers is a huge undertaking within the district, and to have so many voices included in the decision, I think that's something that we really need. When 7, 8 people make that decision on what to do without having all the facts, I mean, going clear down to the plumbing, looking at all the entities within the building, that makes a huge difference rather than just deciding, oh, well, this one has the fewest numbers of students. So I really like this in-depth discussion regarding that.
Director Potts? Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Potts?
Well, I was going to say it was changing the calendar for Walcott. Obviously, this facility plan, this preliminary report, is the primary thing that we are going to be dealing with. It's laying out the future, and you can't underestimate or overpraise what's going on here.
Thank you, Director Gordon.
Yeah, same. I know I wasn't on the board the last time discussions about school closures and changing things happened, but I was at a lot of the meetings, and it was very emotional, and it was very clear at that time that it wasn't being approached with what's best for everyone. And I feel very confident that the information we received tonight is already giving us a better bouncing off point than there ever was 3-4 years ago. And that makes me confident that by the time these discussions are finished and we are presented with the information that has come from the mouths of the people that work in the buildings about what they need, and from the parents of what they need, we are going to be as well equipped as we possibly can be to make the right decisions. And that's a big deal, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm really thankful that they came to talk to us tonight. Also, I really like the 10-year mentality plan. That's phenomenal.
Thank you. Student board members, you can start at whatever end you want.
I think that this committee is really building the district together as a whole. Like, we're ranging from opinions from students to parents to teachers to administration all the way to board members. That's all of us, and that's really what the Davenport Schools Foundation should be, is everyone. And I think that that's really great that that's what it's coming to, and we'll continue to be looking out for the next generations.
Something from the beginning of the meeting that I'm excited about is the whole bus procedural thing. Because last meeting we went over it. It was said annually, and I rode the bus in elementary school, and I was like, I swear we had to use the emergency exit twice, and I thought that was for a reason. I should have said something, but I'm glad that safety is a priority, and that we looked back over that. Also, I really appreciate that the whole. I think the guy said it was like over 60 slides. I'm glad that even when he was scrolling through it, it wasn't like all text because nobody wants to read that, like he says. And it was actually interesting and not necessarily boring even for me since I'm not going to be here. But I really appreciate that it was interactive and had colors and stuff. Just saying.
Can I add one more thing? Oh, I mean, I guess I could agree with them. I do think it was a little eye-opening about our buildings, like the things that are wrong with our buildings, especially Central. I honestly feel bad for whoever has to go in there because that's going to be terrible. But just to see like what our buildings do need, and me being a student, I think us as students would have probably helped them a lot more because we use the facilities every day. Like we can't see behind walls, but we can physically see like what's wrong with our bathrooms, especially throughout the school.
Thank you.
I left out one thing. I was excited about the voucher resolution, the anti-voucher resolution, and thank you all for voting for that.
Now you stole my deal. All right, Superintendent Schneckloff.
What stuck out to me were those numbers shared in our board long range facility committee meeting of our capacity. Our empty seats right now is 3,000 to 5,000, and our enrollment over 10 years is projected to go down. It's never laid out a clearer path for what we need to do, and so having all the information to decide what the next path is. We're heading in the right direction. There's some difficult decisions on the horizon and very exciting outcomes as well, because from that can be a beautiful future.
Thank you. Director Beck stole my thunder, but I was going to say I thought it was awesome that we passed the anti-voucher resolution unanimously. And I'm glad we finally got to talk about something at a board meeting that's in my wheelhouse in the construction realm, so it's kind of nice from the educational realm. So I definitely go all in on this stuff and look at all that stuff. It was great to have all the numbers, where our buildings are at, where they rate and everything like that. This is, when I first got on the board, we got a thing like this handed to us. Here's your long-range facilities plan for the next 10 years, and never went in this depth or anything like that. I think it's an honest look at our buildings and everything like that. Nothing's held back, no smoke and mirrors. Here's the bad parts, here's the good parts, here's where we are for capacity. These are the things that we need to correct. If we would have been doing that a long time ago, we'd probably be in a lot better situation than we are, but we're where we are from previous things, so we're moving forward. I appreciate all the student board members' engagement with all of this. And also, I do want to say on the record, we have not talked about closing any buildings, and I know 2 board members referenced that tonight, so I don't want it to front page of the Quad City Times tomorrow that we're talking about closing buildings, because that is not. We're going to figure everything out, and then we'll go from there. So I just want to clarify that we have not talked about closing any buildings at all. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
3 hours. 3 hours long. And we